During the last week's City Council meeting at Barrie City Hall, two major matters were addressed. The first involved residents making deputations opposing a proposed residential development at 19 Dundonald Street. The initial application was for a 9-story, 58-unit condominium with underground parking. However, following community feedback and a staff report, the proposal was revised to 6 stories and 50 units. Despite these changes, residents and the council opposed the development, citing concerns about density and project suitability for the site.
Coming from the top, no sidewalks, a dysfunctional intersection where it meets Collier Street at the bottom. Just generally is not a location where one should be directing additional traffic of this nature, whether it's vehicular or pedestrian. Really, based on these narrow set of criteria, I couldn't think of a worse place to put a development of this size. I thank you. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate the opportunity to participate in the process.
City planning staff recommended denying the application, emphasizing that the site is not located within a designated intensification area or corridor as per the city's official plan. Aligning with staff's assessment and community feedback, council voted to deny the application.
Zoning bylaw amendment application, 19 Dundonald Street, Ward 2. Any comments or questions? Call the vote. Carries.
The second matter saw council engage in an extensive discussion about better ways to measure community safety and reduce crash rates at high-risk intersections and road segments. Ward 10 Councillor Bryn Hamilton proposed adding several key performance indicators, or KPIs for short, to the 2022 and 2026 strategic plan. These included the reduction in crash rates, which would involve identifying high-risk intersections to better target road safety and speed reduction measures.
Which ones, we don't want a laundry list of measures, but which ones really are meaningful that we could add to our different themes within our strategic plan that would add some more value to us, and where were the ones that weren't meaningful, either that we weren't, we were seeing a steady state and no longer progressing, and it wasn't meaningful to report on. So,
however, Ward 3 Councillor Ann-Marie Kungl raised concerns about the feasibility of the KPIs and suggested deferring the matter for discussion during the Community Safety Committee meeting.
Kind of welcome a deferral overall of the amendment because I'd like to explore some. My biggest question is some of these things, what do we own versus influence, and then are we putting resources to these if they're new? So wanting a bit more of the context behind some of them. I think, all of us want to see reductions in crash rate, but it's really looking at, are they our KPIs, or are we asking a service provider to be presenting them back? So
the recommended additions are our KPIs. These are the ones that we would own. So for example, reduction in crash rate. So understanding the highest rate intersections for us, so we can actually target where we're putting road safety measures, speed safety measures in place.
However, Council rejected Councillor Kungl's suggestion to defer the KPI changes and approved Councillor Hamilton's amendment. The following is our coverage of the meeting.
We have two deputants' requests regarding motion 24G24, zoning bylaw amendment application 19 Dundonald Street, Ward 2. In accordance with the city procedural bylaw, each deputant will be permitted to a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. I will now call upon Charles Bin.
Hello, thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor Thompson, members of council. My name is Charles Bean. I live at 49 Teresa Street. That's the corner of Teresa and Dundonald. So as you're walking up the hill, I'm the house right at the top on your left. Michael Larkin, our planner, will be speaking to you about the technical and planning issues with this application. I just wanted to say a few words on the general neighborhood feeling. When the project was first proposed at 9 stories and 58 units, the general feeling in the neighborhood was that it was just far too much density for this particular site. The general feeling was, if they wanted to redevelop, certainly do something that's sensible and safe, but certainly nothing of this magnitude. We certainly recognize and appreciate that staff and the proponent of redesign some elements of the project, but reducing it from 58 to 50 units in our feelings is still far too much density and doesn't meet the standards of being sensible or safe. The specific weaknesses of the site, I think, are very well known. Very steep hill, blind access coming from the top, no sidewalks, a dysfunctional intersection where it meets Collier Street at the bottom. Just generally is not a location where one should be directing additional traffic of this nature, whether it's vehicular or pedestrian. Really, based on these narrow set of criteria, I couldn't think of a worse place to put a development of this size. I thank you. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate the opportunity to participate in the process.
Thank you, sir. Just clarity, just based on your comments, the motion at last week's general committee was actually denied the staff report. So moving forward, the recommendation tonight is not to proceed. Oh, okay, perfect. I now call, yeah, I realized that. I lost where I was.
Good evening, Worship Deputy Mayor Thompson, Worship Student Mayor, members of council, staff, and members of the public that are present tonight. My name is Michael Larkin. I'm a land use planning consultant, and I appear on behalf of Ms. Nadine Carr and her neighbors that live in the vicinity of the proposed development. I am aware that the council has moved to turn the application down, so my comments are basically in support of that motion. Just to recap a little bit, the application was submitted in late December 2021 and proposed to amend the city's zoning bylaw to permit the proposed development, originally envisioned as a 9-story multi-residential condominium with 59 units, excuse me, and 2 stories of underground. The proposal advocated for an overall coverage of 19.6% of the property and required a zoning bylaw amendment from residential single second density to residential apartment dwelling density, excuse me, with special provisions. In the staff report dated June 7th, 2022, in advance of the formal public meeting for the project, it was noted that there may be a need to rezone a portion of the property to an environmental protection zone, and if so, the staff felt at that time that an official plan amendment would be required for the project. To be clear, while the application was to amend the zoning bylaw to permit the development, there was no site plan approval application submitted supporting the proposed amendment. As you're probably aware, site plan application typically provides municipalities with a recognized planning tool to ensure that the development would reflect the proposed or any proposed council approval. As well, there was and has been no official plan amendment application submitted. It's important to note that staff also noted that the proposed development at a density of 148 units per hectare is considered to be a high-density development. Furthermore, they noted that in accordance with the then operative official plan, high-density residential development shall be encouraged to locate in the intensification nodes and corridor. For clarity, Dundonald Street is neither an intensification node nor a corridor. And with the submission of the modified plan, the status of Dundonald Street has not changed. It simply does not meet the parameters for one as set out in the official plan, nor for that matter does it meet the criteria in the city's new official plan. The staff, in their own words, concluded that the subject property is not located within a designated intensification area in that original staff report. Following a public hearing in June 2022, I was approached by Ms. Carr and her neighbors to undertake an analysis of the proposed development in my capacity as a registered professional planner. My report was presented to the client on September 19th, 2022, and included both an analysis of the land use policy framework and a technical assessment of the proposal. I believe ultimately staff were provided with a copy of that report. It's been my position that the consideration of the merits of the application, must be based on a locational application of development densities and its compatibility with the surrounding residential community, as is articulated in the city's official plan. It was concluded that the proposed development does not meet the density policies and compatibility considerations of the OP. In this regard, the planning justification report submitted by the applicant was fundamentally flawed and based on, in my opinion, the incorrect interpretation of the official plan by the proponent regarding the location and proposed development as being in an intensification node. It was thus determined by myself that an official plan, that OP conformity had not been demonstrated. My analysis also included a review of the supporting technical documents submitted by the applicant, and while the studies are mostly supportive of the proposal, it was surprising and telling to note that the historical neighborhood character impact evaluation undertaken by the applicant's consultant identified a number of potential negative impacts to the surrounding neighborhood should development proceed. The proponent submitted a revised proposal in the fall of 2023, which proposed a reduction in building height from 9 to 6 stories, a reduction in the number of units from 58 to 50, in other words, 8 units, a reduction in the number of parkings from 99 to 61, 38 spaces, and a slight increase in the landscaped area from 50%, 50.3 to 54.7. Once again, my client asked me to review the project. Several of the supporting studies were updated to reflect the revised proposal, but interestingly, at the time, a planning justification report was not submitted when I undertook my review in the spring of this year. I do acknowledge, however, that the memo dated September 30th, 2020, addressing...
Thank you, sir. Your time's up of the 5 minutes. Thank you for your deputation. You can give that to the clerk. Is there any questions of the deputant from members of council? Seeing none, thank you for your deputation. That might be the first time in 6 years I've had 2 deputants that were in favor of the motion to council. Councillor Kungl, I do believe you have a motion regarding the tax applications.
I do. Thank you. Thank you. Do I call you your worship this evening? No, I'm checking myself before I slip into. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I do. So moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ngusi that tax applications to council for cancellation, reduction, or addition of taxes dated November 20th, 2024 be tabled, and that the list of applications to council for cancellation, reduction, or addition of taxes dated November 20th, 2024 be submitted by the treasurer in the amount of $54,244.16, and that be approved. Thanks, Wendy.
Moved by Councillor Kungl, second by Councillor Ngusi, tax application to council for cancellation, reduction, and addition to tax dated November 20, 2024. The list of applications to council for cancellation, reduction, and addition of taxes dated November 2024 submitted by the Treasury in the amount of $54,244.16 be approved. Madam Clerk, have we received any objections to the list of applications for cancellation, reductions, in addition to taxes?
No, we have not, Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Are there any comments or questions from members of council? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? Motion passes. Moving on to committee reports. Councillor Kungl, I believe you have the motions.
Thank you, Deputy Thompson. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ngusi, that Section A of the General Committee Report dated November 13th, 2024 is circulated be received. That's 24-G-234. Thank you, Wendy.
Moved by Councillor Kungl, second by Councillor Ngusi, that Section A of General Committee Report dated November 13th, 2024 as circulated be received. Report of the Community Safety Committee dated October 30th, 2024. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Councillor Kungl.
Just to check with the clerk. Are you moving to 24G-235? Section B. That's not my next one. Oh, sorry, thank you, it's within. Thank you, I was just checking it wasn't separate. Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Negussi, that Section B of General Committee Report dated November 13th, 2024 circulated be adopted. This includes 24G 235, 24G 236, 24G 237, 24G 238, 24G 239, and 24G 240.
Moved by Councillor Kungl, second by Councillor Negussi, that Section B of the General Committee Report dated November 13, 2024 as circulated be adopted. Motion 24G 235, a defer of General Committee of August 14th Park Strategic Plan Update. 24G 236, Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application 830, 864, 912 Lockhart. 24G 237, Ending Lane Sidewalk Removal Feasibility. 24G 238, Intersection Safety Investigation Ann Street North and Hamner Street West. 24G 239, Property Acquisition Matter Business Attraction. 24G 240, Tourism Barrie City of Barrie Municipal MAT Tax Collection Agreement Renewal and Update Bylaw. Any questions or comments? I call the vote. Motion carries. Councillor Kungl.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Negussi, that Section C of General Committee Report dated November the 13th, 2024 circulated be received. This is 24-G-241, Value for Money Service Audit Presentation. Thanks, Wendy.
Moved by Councillor Kungl, second by Councillor Negussi, that Section C of the General Committee Report dated November 13, 2024 as circulated be received. 24G 241, Value for Money Service Audit Presentation. Any comments or questions? Call the vote. Motion carries. Councillor Kungl.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Negussi, that Section D of General Committee Report dated November the 13th, 2024 circulated be adopted. This is 24-G-242, Value for Money Service Audit Report.
Moved by Councillor Kungl, second by Councillor Negussi, that Section D of the General Committee Report dated November 13, 2024 as circulated be adopted. 24G 242, Value for Money Service Audit Report. Any comments or questions? I call the vote. Motion carries. Councillor Kungl.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Negussi that Section E of General Committee Report dated November the 13th, 2024 circulated be adopted. This is 24-G-243, Additional Information on Key Performance Indicators for Council's 2022 to 26 Strategic Plan.
I almost said moved by myself. I'm sorry. Moved by Councillor Kungl, second by Councillor Negussi, that Section E of the General Committee Report dated November 13, 2024 as circulated be adopted. 24G, Additional Information KPIs Indicators for Council 2022-2026 Strategic Plan.
Hold, please. I'd like to put forward an amendment.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Negussi that motion 24G-243 of Section E of the General Committee Report dated November 13th, 2024 be amended by deleting paragraph 1 and replacing it with the following: that the key performance indicators for Council's 2022 to 2026 strategic plan be amended as follows. Under community safety, by adding the KPI reduction in crash rate for highest rating intersections and road segments, by adding the KPI % implementation of community safety and well-being plan, by removing KPI number of code inspections, Under infrastructure investments, by adding the KPI infrastructure capital plan amount approved and amount spent, actual capital spending as a percentage of total budget, and by reporting the KPI related to total kilometers of paving for new road lanes separately from reconstruction and resurfacing. And finally, under responsible governance, by adding the KPI total cost avoidance associated with continuous improvement initiatives. And happy to speak to that.
The floor is yours.
I need that to refer to, but just going off, that's okay. Just going off memory, thank you to Councillor Negussi for holding this item last week. It enabled some really good dialogue. I think we'll recall we had requested staff to take back our KPIs from a strategic plan and to enhance the data to allow some baseline data and some target measures so that we could really make those indicators more meaningfully. Staff came back with an excellent report, and in addition to what we'd asked them to do, they actually provided or suggested a number of other possible measures for us to include within the strategic plan KPIs. We had a good dialogue last week as we looked at some of those suggested measures, and as a takeaway, I did follow up with staff to identify which ones, we don't want a laundry list of measures, but which ones really are meaningful that we could add to our different themes within our strategic plan that would add some more value to us, and where were the ones that weren't meaningful, either that we weren't, we were seeing a steady state and no longer progressing and it wasn't meaningful to report on. So those are the changes in front of you. We did talk last week about a number of the safety ones, the rate of crashes, the crash collisions, so we've included that. The infrastructure one for paving, there was just a slight amendment there. So I listed them out. They were circulated prior, so hopefully you've had a look. They were circulated yesterday, I believe, but happy to take questions. But this is in line with what we talked about last week. Staff are on board with the recommended changes. I've made sure that there's no issues or concerns on their regard in terms of the ones that we are adding and also the ones that we are removing. So I got some feedback on that. Otherwise, I'll take questions as needed.
Councillor Kungl.
Some questions, but before I begin, I wasn't able to locate the email easily just to have it in front. Was that from the clerk or a member of the clerk's office, just so we can bring it up? Tracy, thank you. So a couple of quick comments as I'm pulling that up. I believe the first one you mentioned, Councillor Hamilton, was community safety, the KPI to reduce crash rate. And just looking at some of them, like a little bit of difficulty, like in point in time, because we can only speak to it once at council with some of these. So I'd kind of welcome a deferral overall of the amendment because I'd like to explore some. My biggest question is some of these things, what do we own versus influence? And then are we putting resources to these if they're new? So wanting a bit more of the context behind some of them. I think, all of us want to see reductions in crash rate, but it's really looking at, are they our KPIs or are we asking a service provider to be presenting them back? So are they ours or are they ones that we want service providers to be inclusive of? Could you clarify that for me?
The recommended additions are our KPIs. These are the ones that we would own. So for example, reduction in crash rate. So understanding the highest rate intersections for us so we can actually target where we're putting road safety measures, speed safety measures in place.
Thank you for that clarification. My next one is % implementation of community safety and wellbeing plan. I hesitate, of course, we want to see that fully implemented. That committee has just met for the third time as of this week. We're having a lot of very healthy conversation about who owns that plan. So the committee is there really to kind of look at the refresh. That'll be done by July. But I would say for me, it would be good if the committee was engaged in that and that process kind of fell through around recommendations. Because once we see those recommendations in July or before that, I think the intent is ideally to have it coming to council sometime in June before the summer break, but then really looking at who owns those pieces out of the recommendations. So what's been closed out by the last plan, but really it's probably going to be a cascading year-over-year plan around progress. So I'm not sure how we want to think about % complete because it could be complete in 4 years or what its progress look like or what's reasonable. But again, I think it's a citywide plan, but the individuals that necessarily are moving the directions that will go through that might not be within our mandate to control. They might be living within others' strategic plans and embedding it. So just looking to clarify, because off the top would love to explore this, but hesitating to kind of full blanket support it.
Yeah.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. So again, I know this has been an interesting one because we had we've done a community safety and wellbeing plan in the past as well, and I didn't even know it existed when I took this seat and chair, and it was of concern to me because we had spent quite a bit of money in consultants and developing the plan. We had spent quite a bit of time and energy getting together with partners. We are legislated to have a plan in place, so I understand this plan has to be done. And I think the intent of this, when you look at the percent, so I think there was a typo maybe in the email that was provided, it's percent implementation of community safety and well-being plan. And I think the onus is on us. Our strategic plan is to 2026, right? So the committee has met. We're working to put together the plan. There's going to be a number of recommendations out of that. And I think it is important for us to own it. It is the city's plan. And although there's partners involved, what's the point in developing a plan? What's the point in having partners come to the table? What's the point in investing time and energy and resources if we're not actually going to use that in a meaningful way? So we can look at the how we're defining implementation, but it really is going to be, and it doesn't matter. It might be 5% implemented, right? This is only feasible, but I want to know this sitting around this table. I actually want to know what's in the plan. How are we progressing on it? Where are the roadblocks? Where do we need to have further conversations with partners? Where do we need to tap on our partners to step up and create progress? So I understand it's a collaborative fashion. I understand it could be a challenging one, but that's the whole point of KPIs, right? You don't choose KPIs where you're in the green for 5 years. Those aren't meaningful. You want to choose the ones that are difficult to achieve. You want to choose the ones that enable dialogue and conversation. So for me, this is an important one to have, although I agree it could be challenging. I think it's important to keep it front and center, knowing that community safety and well-being is one of the #1 priorities in our communities. So that's my stance on it.
Yeah, I guess the other piece that I would like to be exploring, so again, I would encourage a deferral and broader conversation, because I agree, having measurements for improvement keeps us around, what's on the table, what are we resourcing, what's putting forward. There's no conversation around how we resource some of these things to happen. So we're setting indicators almost before we're having a conversation about what can we measure? Like what are we actually moving forward? What are we investing in? And so if we care about this, then I would almost want to say, what's a deeper conversation around, is this a stretch target? Are we even close? So what's the data first on some of these pieces? And then is it really within us to kind of say, it's a point of information we want reported back? Or for me, a KPI is more of a very specific thing that's really rests within us to control and influence. And not all of these, I think we can do that. So I think it's great to identify that these are areas we want to see included. I think there's a conversation to be had. So like resourcing and what are we putting into it? So if we care about this, then actually, what is the bar and how are we moving the baseline? I know we're getting into budget deliberations. So for me, I would hold personally around supporting it at this point in time until I can say, you know what, we're actually putting money towards this, and let's see how far we can push, and are we aligning resources to that? But some of these pieces, I think, I'm not prepared to just throw a KPI on the table without having that broader conversation. So for me, council's difficult because I can only, again, talk to it once, and it's coming to the side. I think there's really great opportunity to kind of say what else ties to some of these things, because I think we're moving in the right direction on pieces, and I think we have been having better conversations over the past 2 years through service providers. I just struggle with some of them we don't own. We might want for information, and we might want to talk about accountability to moving the bar, but what's our role in that is more the specific one I want to dig into. So I'll hold it.
Thank you. I next have Councillor Corser.
I'd like to, through you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Hamilton, I think that's, I love the idea of implementing the community safety and well-being plan and all, but I agree with the deferral, because it's kind of like when I was asking staff about how can we measure and control speeding. And I was like, the speeding is the biggest thing on the streets, and staff gave me the feedback that they don't control moving vehicles, and you couldn't measure it. So there's so many, as Councillor Kungl mentioned, there's so many other entities involved in the community safety and well-being plan that I don't know the measurement, if it's actually kind of within staff power to implement some of the things, because of the other players at the table might be responsible for implementing some of these things. And I kind of got shot down on my speeding thing, and I'm wondering if the KPIs might be questionable just because the city staff will not have control over it.
Can I?
Councillor Hamilton.
Just to respond, because I think it was directed at me, thank you, and through you. So in terms of the control, the Community and Safety and Wellbeing Plan I spoke to, in terms of that's a collaborative partnership, so I'm not going to speak to that anymore. I've said my piece on that piece. In terms of the rest not being in our control, I'm unsure as to why that is being said over on the other side of the table here. By adding the KPI, reduction in crash rate for highest rating intersections and road segments. Again, we are all aware, you spoke to it last week, Councillor Cursor, in terms of this as being a significant issue. If we can't measure where the key issues are from a crash perspective, where are we targeting our investments and our resources? This is well in our control. So that one you're shaking your head yes to. In terms of the other ones, it's percentages. So infrastructure investments, you're looking at your capital plan that approved and your amount spent. That's just a percentage, right? How well are we spending what we've approved? So I'm just a little unclear in terms of what you guys are talking about in terms of owning it and this not being realistic or feasible. These are measures that staff brought forward as suggested. These are not ones that I've pulled out. So again, I'm just answering sort of some of your concerns, but respect where you two are sitting over there. Just I don't share the same concerns based on the conversations with staff, the report that I read thoroughly, and follow-up conversations I've had with them as well. So thank you.
If I still have the floor, I'd like to redirect to staff.
Yeah, you get to speak once, but that question was just answered, so you still have the floor.
Oh, okay. I'd like to redirect to staff. I guess it would be through you, Deputy Mayor, to, I believe, Michelle Banfield. With this implementation of community safety and well, I guess it wouldn't be staff. I'm not sure who would take this question. Whoever wants to take a stab at it would be the implementation of community safety and well-being plans. Oh, sorry, Ms. McAlpine. Would that be measurable in that before we have the end of the, can you see there being complications with measuring the outcomes of that?
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Courser, the current Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan has 15 action items associated with it. Though the number of those action items that are in progress or being implemented, certainly of the 15 could be provided as a percentage. I'm not sure that the entire community would want to weight them all as having the same weight in terms of action items. And since the plan is under review with potential revisions, there's always opportunity for the action items to be revised or recommended to be revised as part of that review. As has previously been mentioned, this is a plan that involves a lot of partners. It is a 4-year term to the plan. Those partners have had significant change in their leadership, and this may be a way of driving all of the partners to the plan to include this in their mandates and move forward. But ultimately, we're not the board of many of those organizations, so that is a bit of a challenge on that front. But I think you would be looking at the percentage of the action items that are underway. Many of these action items are things that will take 5, 10 plus years to actually see progress on, and are not necessarily measured annually. They may be measured with census reporting and things like that. So there are ways of doing it. It may be a more challenging metric than some of the others.
And if I could follow up with Ms. McAlpine, can you see this being, with that in mind, could you see this KPI being something that would be measurable by the end of this term that we could put out to the public to say, hey, look, we're successful in our KPIs?
Through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Courser, I think what you would be indicating, as Councillor Hamilton clarified with this particular one, is the percentage of the action items that are either in progress or being implemented That's different than perhaps what people initially heard, which was the percentage of the plan that's been implemented. I think that there's a difference there that's a very important nuance. So certainly we can get feedback from the partners on whether or not they're making significant progress on their action items. It's not, some of them may not be the most objective in terms of measuring change until you get later data sources that may not be on an annual basis or even within your term of council.
Right. Thank you.
Maybe just, Ms. McGregor, do you have anything you want to add? Because the KPI kind of falls under the audit or there's in some of the questions.
Deputy Mayor Thompson, certainly I agree with the comments that Ms. McAlpine shared. I don't have anything additional to add.
Perfect. I just wanted to give you the opportunity. Councilor Morales.
Thank you. Thank you, Acting Mayor Thompson. I like this amendment. I think they're going to work. I think the KPIs are going to work. But it is because I think that they're going to work that I just have a question. I'll start with Mr. Prowse and then I'll go from there. I just want to make sure that the KPIs are aligned with the support that they get from their respective budget category. What I mean by that is, at least for these two, since obviously we're talking about the amendments, it kind of plays into the main one though, but if by any aim the KPI reducing crash rates, so let's say that obviously we want the KPI to be high. That's a good one for it to be high. Let's say it's too low. With the amendment as printed, Mr. Prowse, does staff currently have the liberty, or does it need to be amended because there's no mandate there, but do staff have the liberty to, let's use the crash one, the percentage is too low, so that's bad because the reduction is not high, so low is bad. For there to be an addendum when these KPIs are reported saying, staff did not experience the percentage of crash rate reductions as much as expected. A possible solution to this could be either more money, it's always money, either through possibly enforcement, automated cameras, infrastructure redesign, raised intersection medians, delineation, that kind of thing, for that one. Now for community safety, I'm gonna not speak to code inspections, that one's doesn't need it. But for the community safety, we want that percentage of implementation of community safety and well-being plan. We want the percentage to be up. So let's say that there's an expectation the percentage is too low. Do staff have the liberty to include as an addendum to the KPI? I love the color grading, but also an addendum saying the reason the percentage of completion is not as high is because other stakeholders have been delayed. Or the reason is because council didn't hire the appropriate staff, or we are gapping a position, or council direction was to not equip it properly. Do you have the liberty as the amendment stands to say that? Because this has budget implications. I don't want a thing where we pat ourselves on the back and go, great, these are really needed. But then, we don't provide the proper infrastructure, or we make a cut to the infrastructure, the DERF, whatever it's, I know the acronym changed. So I know these are intricately connected. So just to summarize it again, as the amendment is printed, do staff have the liberty to provide an addendum saying the percentage is not where we want it to be? These are things council should consider.
Through you, Acting Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Morales. Councillor Morales, the key performance indicators are really council's dashboard. Once they're settled upon, it's council's intention to drive these initiatives potentially through additional resources. It would certainly be staff's intention to provide council with as much information around that as we can. The color of the background, if there is poor performance in a certain area, why, and what we think we can do about it. And as council controls the resources at the end of the day, we would come back to council and ask for additional resources.
As a follow-up to that, so thank you for that, Mr. Prowse. So just to clarify, if the KPIs are our dashboard, so staff are able to be our, gas low warning light on the dashboard, if you will, if a percentage is either not high being good in that category, or too low, so we can respond appropriately, especially with budget times. Maybe not this budget necessarily because it's close, or maybe yes, and future ones as well. You do have the ability to be the flashing light engine, check engine, or put more gas in the dashboard, if we're going to go with your analogy. Is that there?
Through you, Mayor Thompson, Deputy Mayor Thompson, to Councillor Morales. I'm just imagining being a flashing light in the spirit of Christmas, Councillor Morales. Councillor Morales, for sure it is staff's intention to inform and advise council. I think what we are trying to flesh out on the community safety wellbeing plan is that would certainly be our intention there. When you don't have direct control, you do rely on your partners to inform you so you can inform council. I think that is the only piece of this that I would say is a little bit nuanced. When it's something that staff control directly, it's easy for us to report back on council on exactly what we think both the problem is and the solution. When you are relying on community partners, you're relying on their interpretation of that. So we would certainly relay that, but only through the knowledge that we're able to glean.
Okay, so through you, Acting Mayor Thompson. So perfect. So it's easier with the infrastructure percentages because we control that internally. Perfect. And Mustang does not get warning signs. Only the Christmas trees there. So okay, Acting Mayor Thompson, I'll be supporting this. Here, I very much hear Councillor Kungl's concerns, comments on this, and here's why. There may be other KPIs, but I've experienced it myself. Acting Mayor Thompson, sometimes there's such a thing as KPI paralysis. The royal one spends too much time trying to get at the right KPIs, and then it's almost like having a committee within a committee. So I commend Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Negussi for just bringing this, doing the work on this. Let's get going. Let's adopt these. Let's power forward. If there are more KPIs that arise later, either through the work with stakeholders or through our own ideation, that's great. I believe that we've already revised KPIs to a degree, and I know that we can't just bring them overnight, but I'm sure there would be an opportunity if there's something glaring that comes up. But I don't think we should hold up on even on these ones in case for the other ones. So I do welcome that future conversation, but I'll be supporting this.
Thank you. Next, I have Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor Thompson. Originally, I did have a couple of questions, but they've since been pretty much answered. I will support the amendment, and I definitely do not support deferring this and kicking it down the road any further. This was on the agenda a week ago. We've had this amendment emailed out to us over 24 hours ago. And especially since there's been a lot of conversation around the community and safety and well-being plan. As someone that was on that committee last term with the original implementation on it, I actually applaud adding this, and thank you for doing the homework that you've done on this, because I think that committee needs to have their feet held to the fire so that way things get implemented as quickly as possible. How successful those implementations are regardless of this, it's just a matter of getting as many of those 15 actions implemented as soon as possible. This is provincially mandated. This plan is several years into the making. Obviously, it's going through a minor revision right now, but the meat and potatoes of it was created last term, and a lot of work was conducted using a consultant, or else we wouldn't be where we are today with this plan. So I definitely do not support deferring this and moving it down the road any further. When it comes to the other pieces, I do really think that it's a good idea to add these additional measurables. So I definitely will support this, and not any deferral if that does come up. I know it's been mentioned a few times. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Thompson. I appreciate Councillor Harvey's efforts to get people's feet to the fire, but community partners who volunteered to be on our committee, we're not really going to hold your feet to the fire, literally. But community safety and well-being plans are really well intended, but they're hard to measure. I think doesn't mean we shouldn't measure. So I do support the effort from Councillor Hamilton to provide some measures. And when you look at the directions, instructions from the province around community safety and well-being plans, it starts with evidence and evaluation, like what do you have as your baseline? Create that baseline. Then how do you move that? But again, it's not easy. And also, again, reminding us that, yes, we rely on community partners. We invited them to be part of the plan, but we're talking Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, things that we don't fund, that we don't necessarily control. So I think it requires a great deal of collaboration and patience and dedication to move some of these really big community safety and well-being measures. But again, I agree with Councillor Hamilton. It's hard to measure, but we should still try to measure. And thank you to the folks. And I know you were involved last term, Councillor Harvey, and I think our Barrie Police Services, credit to them for really helping get where we got to in our city staff with the community safety and well-being plan. Because the people we invite to this plan, they all have a full-time job doing something else. They aren't city staff. They're staff of hospitals, community organizations, not-for-profits. So they come here with good intentions to try to help move a marker for their city. So while they're actually trying to move markers for their schools and their school boards and their hospital and their organizations. So anyway, so with that said, I will support the motion, but we recognize it's going to be hard to measure, but we should still measure. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Seeing nobody else on the motion as amended. Oh, I have to read the amendment. Moved by Councillor Hamilton and second by Councillor Negussi, the motion G24-243 of Section E of the General Committee report dated November 13, 2024 be amended by deleting paragraph 1 and replaced with the following: by adding KPI reduction in crash-rated, high-rated intersections of road, adding KPI implement as community safety and well-being plan percentage implementation.
Just ignore that. It was my own note.
Oh, sorry. And by removing KPI numbered code inspections under infrastructure and investment, by adding KPI infrastructure capital plan amount, approved amount spent, actual capital spending as percentage of total budget, and KPI related to total kilometers paved for new roads and reconstruction and resurfacing of existing roads. Do I have any comments or questions on the amendment? You've already spoke to the amendment.
I wanted you to repeat the implementation, the KPI for implementation of community safety, because it's not what I have in my email. So I just wanted you to repeat it one more time so I could understand it, if that's possible. I don't mean to ask questions.
Well, I'm reading it, so it might not be understandable. But yes, no problem. By adding KPI reductions in crash-related highest rated intersection of road, stigmata. By adding KPIs, implementation of community safety and well-being plan, and by removing KPI number of code inspection.
So there's no percentage of implementation of community safety?
Yeah. Yes, it's written in pen in the black pen.
Sorry. Percentage of implementation of community safety. Yes, there is. It was written in pen. I thought they were Councillor Hamilton's notes. I didn't realize.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody spoke except for you two. Any comments? I'll call the vote on the amendment. Yes. The amendment carries. Now on the amended motion, any comments or questions? Councillor Kungl.
Just one comment, like happy to see conversations continue, but I can't support it because it's not specific enough. We're not talking about resources in context to that. We can bake tons of things that we want for information into this, but when we label them a KPI, I think there's a greater responsibility here to have deeper conversation about who owns it. Is it for us to kind of manage? And if it is, then we really need to be putting resources behind some of these things. And I think it's just too bad that we're deciding on it, but we're not having a space for conversation. So I look forward to however they come up, then digging into it. But that is my rationale for not supporting it. It's not that I'm not supporting Forward Moment or that understanding how things are moving forward and making progress on things that matter to us. These do touch things that matter to me, but this isn't the process for me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you. Just to touch on Councillor Kungl's comments a little bit. I think the fact that we actually do have resources in place, and these KPIs will actually measure whether or not there's enough resources in each of these areas. So that way, when the KPIs do get measured in the future, we can then determine whether or not more resources need to be allocated in certain areas to be able to achieve the KPIs that we should be achieving in each of these areas. So I don't necessarily agree with those comments, and I think this is how we're able to start the basis point for measuring and be able to pivot in the future as we see fit.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. And through you, I'm sorry, I don't want to take up more airtime. I know there's people waiting patiently for the next agenda item, but I just want to say, because I'm very passionate about KPIs and I really understand the importance of KPIs. This is what I do my day job. The intent of a KPI is to enable dialogue. It's not about resources. It's not about control. It's enable dialogue for us around the table. If we're in the red, if we're performing poorly, that's okay. It's for us to have a conversation. What does this mean? What do we want to do? Do we want to divert resources? Is this a big enough priority now that we need to actually look at where we're spending and where we need to maybe make some reinvestment? So that is the whole point of a KPI. So we have our strategic objectives. We've got KPIs within those objectives, one of them being safety. So for me, I understand some of these might be challenging, but that is the whole point in having these measures. They're in our control. As long as we can measure them, that's all we need to be able to do. Staff has come up with these suggested indicators, so we know we can measure them. And now it's up to us to keep the eye on the ball, to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. And where we're not, well, let's have a conversation about it and figure out why not and if we can. So thank you for the support. I'm really encouraged by this. I think this strengthens our strategic plan tremendously. And thank you to staff, actually, for bringing this forward again and bringing us some new revised suggestions that will hopefully make this plan more meaningful. It's not just a strategic plan that goes on a shelf that we report back after 4 years, yep, we're all green. That, to me, we've done a really poor job. So thank you for staff and thank you for the comments around the table tonight. I think this is great dialogue.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to comment? I'll call the vote on the motion amended. Carries. Councillor Kungl, I believe you have section F.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Thompson. I moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Negussi, that Section F of General Committee Report dated November 13th, 2024 circulated be adopted. This is 24-G-244, Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application, 19 Dundonald Street, Ward 2.
Moved by Councillor Kungl, second by Councillor Negussi, that Section F, the General Committee Report dated November 13th, 2024, as circulated, be adopted. 24G244, Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application, 19 Dundonald Street, Ward 2. Any comments or questions? Call the vote. Carries. It's a conspiracy. He's a little kid. He wants to read the agenda for bedtime. Oh, sorry. We have no deferred business. I believe there is a direct motion.
Yes, I'd like to put the motion on the floor.
Go ahead.
Moved by, and first of all, this is a timely matter, so I thank you for the opportunity to put it on the floor via direct motion, but moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Negussi, regarding a pilot patio program, Flying Monkeys Brewery / Restaurant. One, that notwithstanding Business Licensing Bylaw 2006-266 as amended, staff issue a right-of-way permit in support of a pilot patio program allowing Flying Monkeys Brewery / Restaurant to have their patio remain open until April 14th, 2025 at a reduced allowance of 8 feet from the building, at which time an updated permit for the summer-fall season will be added. 2, that all provisions within the Business Licensing Bylaw 2006-266 as amended and the Snow Clearing Downtown Bylaw 2008-212 remain in effect during this period. 3, and that staff review the outcome of this pilot program to determine any operational impacts for potential continuation or expansion and report back to the Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee or General Committee.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Nixon, second by Councillor Negussi. Pilot patio program, Flying Monkey Brewery Restaurant. Number 1, notwithstanding the Business License Bylaw 2006-266 as amended, staff issue the right-of-way permit in support of the pilot program allowing Flying Monkey Brewery Restaurant to have their patio remain open until April 14th, 2025 at a reduced allowance of 8 feet from the building, at which time updated permit for the summer-fall season will be issued. And 2, that all other previous within the Business License Bylaw 2006-266 as amended and the Snow Cleaning Downtown Bylaw 2008-212 remain in effect during this period. And 3, that staff review the outcome of the pilot program to deem other operational impacts for potential continuation of expansion and report back to Infrastructure and Community Investment Committee or General Committee. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I can briefly. This came about as a request, and which is mainly a result of our winters certainly aren't what they used to be, and it is I should obviously mention again that it is a pilot program. We're looking at one establishment to put out a few tables, not certainly what we normally have in the summertime, and see how it goes, see how the public reacts to it, and see what the demand is, and depending on how that goes, then we can either expand it next year or discontinue. And I do have an amendment to this. Would I read the amendment now, or do we do that after?
Sure. And then if anybody has any questions,
sure.
The amendment's on the floor.
Okay. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Negussi. That the direct motion concerning the pilot patio program, Flying Monkeys Brewery / Restaurant, be amended by deleting paragraph 1 and replacing it with the following. That notwithstanding Business Licensing Bylaw 2006-266 as amended, staff issue the following. A right-of-way permit in support of a pilot patio program allowing Flying Monkeys Brewery / Restaurant to have their patio remain open until April 14th, 2025 at a reduced allowance of 8 feet from the building, at which time an updated permit for the summer/fall season will be issued. And up to 2 additional right-of-way permits to support 2 additional patios to open between March 15th, 2025 to April 14th, 2025 at a reduced allowance of 8 feet from the building, at which time an updated permit for the summer/fall be issued. And do I speak to the amendment?
I just need to read it first, and then I'll throw it back to you. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Nixon, second by Councillor Negussi, that direct motion concerning the pilot program Flying Monkey Brewery Restaurant be amended by deleting paragraph 1 and replacing it with the following. Notwithstanding the Business License Bylaw 2006-266 as amended, staff issue the following. A right-of-way permit in support of the pilot program allowing Flying Monkey Brewery Restaurant to have their patio remain open until April 14th, 2025 at a reduced allowance of 8 feet from the building, at which time an updated permit for the summer-fall season will be issued. And B, up to 2 additional right-of-way permits in support, 2 additional patios to open between March 15th to April 14th, 2025 at a reduced allowance of 8 feet from the building, at which time an updated permit for the summer-fall season will be issued. And if you'd like to speak to that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Yeah, basically the amendment is just to allow a couple of other establishments an opportunity to join in, but they are really not interested until after St. Patrick's Day. I think they're just going to wait and see how the pilot works out for the first few months. And those are really the only ones who have the proper frontage when you look at the parking requirements and that could really do it. So we are going to, the proposal is to allow one early, a couple to join in a little while later, and then, as I say, it is a pilot project. Like all these things, it's obviously a weather related. So I mean, if it turns out that the winter season is warm with little snow, then I'm sure they'll be used with. I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate them. And if the weather's terrible, then it's really not an issue because people aren't going to be sitting out there anyway. So that's all I have to say.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor Thompson. Great idea. I'm in support of it. Just have a question in terms of, was the BIA supportive of this in terms of the chosen location, how it was chosen or identified, and what the process is to determine who else may join this pilot over next year?
Yes, they were. Originally the conversation was more of just. Originally it came up as just a one location because that's only one person had requested it. Originally I had suggested that we just make it wide open for the entire street. Problem with that is that, as mentioned, we do have some locations that, because of the way the parking on street parking is set up, and they really wouldn't have the room to do it. It was decided that we would just, for the time being, just allow for the ones who it'll actually work for them. So,
Councillor Corsa.
I'm in all support of having winter patios because I've been to them and they're a lot of fun and they're really nice and very Canadian. The only question I kind of have for this is if if this does not work out well, does this motion, the amendment, allow for 2 other businesses to open regardless if it doesn't work out well, if they choose to? Do you know what I mean?
I believe so. Yeah, I mean it's a pilot project for this season, and if it doesn't work out, if there's more problems than what it's worth, then I'm sure the pilot won't be considered in the next year. But it's a pilot. We'll look at it once it's over. I say staff will look at it once it's over, and at that point it'll be determined whether it's something that's going to carry on or just something that was tried. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just for a point of clarity, at the end of the motion, it says that staff will report back to infrastructure or general committee. So I would imagine, and I won't speak for staff, but if there was some operational issues with snow cleaning or any other, I think we would get a report. And I believe that if it in no way it was unsafe at any time, we would have a report prior to that. I'll call the vote on the amendment. All in favor? on the motion as amended? Carries. Just so council knows, the patio's not open right now. We have no presentations. We will move to inquiries. Members of council, does anybody have inquiries of staff? Seeing none, members of council, do announcements. Councillor Kungl.
Some things are consistent. I do have a couple of announcements, and one in appreciation of Mayor Alex Snettle, Councillor Harvey, and myself. I know other members are looking to attend at some point over the week. We were able to be at the opening ceremonies of the 15th Everest Canadian Curling Club Championships. It's amazing to see the work that partnership has brought together, and my compliments to Tourism Barrie and sponsors and the team from Everest. But in particular, if you walk through the curling club doors right now, you're going to see from coast to coast an amazing group of men and women's teams from across Canada that are at the club level. And so it's good curling and welcoming the public. What has been amazing about sponsors that have supported this is it's free to the public to go into the Barrie Curling Club and actually get to see some high-level curling and enjoy that space. So I do welcome the public to that space, and my thanks to the Barrie Curling Club board, staff, and volunteers. It's an A-class event that's happening there right now. The finals, if you are looking to check that out, are happening on Sunday, so curling all through the week, but semifinals Sunday at 9 a.m. and on finals at 2 p.m. So if you do have time in your day, I would encourage you. It'd be a nice experience. My other just announcement is just a thank you in appreciation. Of course, there have been a situation in the city over the past 24 hours that did find itself in the ward, and have had many conversations with businesses and residents. All very thankful for the response, but do want to thank our police services for their incredible response, and also for so many people that actually did as asked and made sure that the whole situation was as safe as possible. And so thank you for those. I know our school was impacted as well as some businesses to stay in place. So it was great to see that that was something that people were in touch on and resolved well for all parties involved. So my thank you to all. Lastly, the Board of Health met today, and we had the pleasure of recognizing a 20-year nurse, public health nurse, who had received an Ontario Provincial Police Commissioner's Commendation. And I wanted just to take a minute to share that. We don't often get updates, but as a service provider and partner of ours, I wanted just to share the recognition that occurred for Kathy Eisner. And this was really specific to an awareness campaign that she took charge and deployed in a region within Simcoe County, Muskoka, specifically in the Nottawasaga area. And she brought a campaign forward that looked at opioid deaths and addiction in partnership between OPP and our health unit. And this received provincial-wide media coverage and as a local demonstration success after 2 years of operating. So I want to thank Kathy for really bringing in her heart and her passion and her skills and expertise. She's been extensively involved in the opioid crisis response for the past 6 years. And we're all the better for the work. We know how difficult it is for our frontline in those situations. So thank you to Kathy.
Councillor Corser.
I wanted to congratulate Diane Finnegan, who is the winner of the Further Faster Pitch competition last night at the oh gee, I lost it. The 5 Points Theater, my apologies. The Further Faster program is, the competition is marked by the conclusion of this year's 3 cohorts of the Further Faster program, which is a 10-week intensive program designed to accelerate entrepreneurs' growth at any stage from idea to scaling. And it is supported by Invest Barrie and the Henry Bernick Enterprise Center through Georgian College. And as mentioned, the winner of the pitch competition was Diane Finnegan, and she has a women's workwear company titled The Dirty Seahorse. And she bested her competition to win $10,000. So congratulations to her, and it's a very important actually initiative because it is for women's safety equipment and workwear that fits properly when in industrial situations where some sizing could be wrong and women can be caught up into equipment when their equipment doesn't fit properly. So congratulations to the Dirty Seahorse again.
I have a couple announcements. The Community Center and 55 Plus Center events and the Recreation and Culture Program calendar are now available, which include special events, activities for the holiday seasons. For further information, list of activities, and facilitating operating hours, please visit barrie.ca. And now I wonder, maybe this is why Mayor Nuttall wasn't here, because I'm here to announce that on street parking overnight, restrictions come into effect December 1st to March 31st from 3 till 6 a.m. within the downtown business improvement area and other streets from 12:01 to 7 a.m. And in any hybrid lots or waterfront parking areas from 12:01 to 5 a.m. For more information, visit barrie.ca/snow. This ain't an announcement, but to the BIA, to the Chamber, and members of council, the Santa Claus Parade happened on the weekend, and it was another fabulous event. Lots and lots of people, and to Stephanie and her partner for coming out on their own time and helping us with the parade float. Thank you kindly. That was very appreciative. So thank you. And to everybody else. A motion to adjourn. Moved by Oh. Councillor Kungl, I believe you have the bylaws.
I got you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Negussi, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bills 119 to 132.
Moved by Councillor Kungl, second by Councillor Negussi. Leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time on this day and finally passed. Bill 119 to 132. Any comments or questions? I'll call the vote. Carries. Councillor Kungl.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Negussi that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 133.
Moved by Councillor Kungl, second by Councillor Negussi. Leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 133. Confirmation by law. Any comments, questions? Call the vote. Carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Morales, second by.
That was the update from Barrie City Hall. Thank you for watching.